Tonight we're going to explore one of the biggest news stories of the past year, and still has headlines on a regular basis. In fact, the Associated Press named this story the biggest story of 2017, and it has many different layers. I guess the best way to describe the story is to say, it's when words turned into action around sexual harassment, and when a problem in society was kind of being addressed, maybe in a very significant way. So we're very lucky tonight. We have a terrific expert to fill us in on kind of how we got here and where we're going. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, and we'll get started.
Wonderful. Thank you, Randy. My name is Danica Wolf, and I'm the coordinator of the Relationship and Sexual Violence Prevention Center here at the University of Missouri. And we are the office on campus who is charged with talking about rape, sexual violence, sexual assault, stalking, sexual harassment, kind of anything on that continuum. And we do that in a number of ways, educating, much like we're doing tonight, actively preventing using primary prevention tools, and responding until we can successfully have prevented all of these acts from occurring. We know we have to respond appropriately, effectively, from an evidence-based and trauma-informed way, and that's what we try to do.
And how long has that office been up and running?
Yeah, we actually just celebrated our 30th birthday last year. So it was founded as the Rape Education Program in 1987, with the peer rape educators as the primary initiative. And we've grown since then to have multiple student organizations, multiple staff members, volunteers, student staff, things of that nature. So.
And I guess in 30 years, kind of different topics have come and gone, different, amounts of interest in the area and stuff like that. But fair to say, perhaps nothing like what happened in 2017.
Yeah, not in the same way. Over the last few years, we have had, probably the last 10 to 12 years, we've had lots of, kind of waves of interest for various reasons, whether it be a high-profile story or something like the Dear Colleague letter of 2011, things that have shed a little more light, spotlight focus on these issues. But gosh, the way that the kind of mainstream culture has paid attention to issues of sexual assault, sexual harassment in many industries, looking at the workplace, looking at schools and the entertainment industry and everything. I mean, that has definitely been new and different, and has kind of shifted not necessarily the work, but the attention a little bit over the last year.
And I guess, so I forgot to introduce myself.
Yes.
So I'll take that opportunity.
Great, thank
nice
you.
to meet you. I'm Randy Picht. I'm the executive director of the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute at the Missouri School of Journalism. And you'll understand how I just remembered to introduce myself,
Yes.
because the way that I sort of, the lens I see this through as how this kind of, just exploded on the scene was from some terrific journalism. Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey from the New York Times with the Harvey Weinstein story, and Rowan Farrow with the New Yorker story. So some great journalism kind of prompted all this. Perhaps there's other things that you can add to that, or where do you think that was sort of what was kind of the tipping point?
Yeah, I really think it was. I don't know if. Let me think. I'm not sure if tipping point is what I've ever thought of this as. To me, it was kind of this perfect storm.
Okay.
Right.
Good.
So we had lots of different things going on, And the conditions were such with, and I don't want to get on a tangent necessarily, but with, lots of folks, especially women, speaking up in the political sphere with, different concerns being raised and whatnot. And then we have the entertainment industry, and I think that really helped, I hope, give these wonderful, wonderful journalists a platform to seek out these stories and grab a hold of these stories. That combined with the power of social media. I mean, I know that with the hashtag #MeToo, which we know was not the birth of the Me Too movement,
Right.
but it certainly thrust it into the spotlight overnight. That I think really helped and gave voice to individuals who aren't celebrities and don't have access to the New York Times or something like that. They could, kind of share their story with their immediate circle as they felt comfortable, either just by saying "Me Too" or by saying, "Here's what happened to me. I don't want this to happen to anyone else." I mean, we saw lots of different kind of forms of speaking out and really owning a person's story and owning their experience. So while I think that certainly the work of the journalists was huge and helped add credibility to the movement, the power of individuals to own their own story as well has been really amazing for survivors, and those are the folks who I'm typically speaking with about it.
Yeah, I think there's always the untold part of the story, and I think maybe the conditions were right for the perfect storm, but then once the storm hit, it really just took on just in many different ways. And Me Too is a perfect example. That did what social media does best, which gave people the opportunity to join in very easily, very quickly, right?
Absolutely.
So it's been, and I'm sure for you in your work, it's kind of changed a few things, perhaps.
Perhaps a little bit. Honestly, what we have seen is we certainly see more people owning their experience and sharing their story, but we have also then seen individuals, I mean, right away, the day that, we kind of woke up to this cascade of disclosures as a society, we then had students, faculty, and staff coming in and saying, "Gosh, this is upsetting." As a survivor, now I'm seeing Me Too everywhere. I feel pressure to share, and I'm not ready. I, don't know how much I should share, or I put Me Too, and then I got this, this backlash from my family, friends, whoever, for whatever reason. I mean, I believe they're well-meaning individuals, but we don't know how to handle it when someone who we love has been hurt. And that, I think, has been an unfortunate byproduct of this very rapid conversation, uptick in conversation around the issues. And I hope that people feel supported. That's always my hope.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people are not really, they don't think of that. And when the tidal wave comes, everybody gets involved, and some people don't really, don't want to be involved. So we know that, it has swept in, and it continues. There's headlines, maybe not as often, but there's still headlines and stories and different things that are happening. So that will continue to be the story that affects people in high places, let's say. But what about, besides the fact that people maybe that were not ready for this and are kind of uncomfortable with it, what about other people that are, that either want to come forward or are not sure what to do? What do you guys talk about, when you get those kind of calls?
Absolutely. So we have the benefit of being kind of we're a confidential resource, which is very important kind of in these times. But
Can I ask a question before I
absolutely.
forget?
Yes.
Is it just for the campus?
Yes, and
Yes, and
yes,
okay.
and this is where I'm going to get myself in trouble. We are, we're a resource and referral service, kind of first and foremost, but and our primary responsibility is to students, faculty, staff, visitors of the MU campus, and kind of anyone who is affiliated with campus.
Okay.
That said, we are not going to turn anyone away. If someone is in acute crisis, we're going to help them manage that moment and then make sure that they have the best referral. And we work collaboratively with folks from all over, certainly Columbia, certainly Boone County, but the entire state. And we've got connections across the nation where we can connect folks to the appropriate resource depending on where the harm has occurred and where folks live. So we're not going to say, oh, you're not part of campus, we can't serve you, but because of the nature of our referrals and resources, not everything on our campus and not all of our services are going to be most appropriate for someone who isn't affiliated.
Because
if that
they're all
makes
kind
sense.
of
They're
focused,
pretty
tailored.
campus-focused.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And we don't provide emergency shelter or anything like that, so we would definitely need to refer to True North or wherever that individual lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So before I rudely interrupted you,
You did
we
not.
were talking about advice that you
Yeah.
would give now to folks that are in these situations, because I'm sure some of it is very similar to the advice you've given for 30 years, but maybe because of the new world that is emerging here, maybe there's something a little bit different. But anyway, I'll let
Sure.
you figure that out.
I'll try. Gosh, yes. So we see individuals who've experienced violence from a number of different sources at really any point in their lives. So we might see someone 12 hours after an assault occurred, but we might see someone 12 years after something occurred, right? And what is probably most common is, the couple of months out from an incident. Delayed reporting, if you will, is really, really common, and it's not terribly understood because people think, gosh, if something were to happen to me, I'd go right to a resource, but there's a lot of things to understand with complex trauma, and this is certainly the area that we're in. So, regardless of when someone came in, we will help them kind of explore their options depending on what is going to be appropriate at the time. So if that is a medical kind of a medical visit, something like that, we will help them get there and we can stay with them through that process. If that is emergency shelter, or again being on a college campus, we look at a lot of academic accommodations and things to help mitigate the immediate effects of even just the disclosure. So one of the hardest things for folks to say is, this happened to me. And that is what has been so beautiful about the Me Too movement, is because one of the most powerful things that someone can hear in that moment is, me too. That happened to me too. And get that validation, because it often feels like they're the only one. So when someone comes to us in crisis is typically what we're seeing. Again, regardless of when the assault happened or incident of violence, the harassment, anything like that, we will listen, believe, support. And those are the three things that I tell anyone and everyone. When someone tells you that this happened, you need to be there. Listen, believe, support, and we'll help explore those options.
Okay.
We don't really give advice.
Okay.
We don't necessarily lead anyone down one path or another. If all they want to do is come in, tell someone, talk to someone, explore some options, and they leave knowing that they are fully empowered to do as they wish, that is excellent service. in our opinion. If we continue to work with them for the next 4 years and navigate all the processes, the legal process, the medical process, the campus process, whatever that might be, that is wonderful as well, and anything in between.
So have you found, so is there anything different about, the past 6 months or so? Is it, are more women coming in with different kinds of concerns, or is it pretty much this the way it's been?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to disappoint. It feels like it's business as usual, really. With the exception of, perhaps more people citing social media or the media, watching TV, watching the Golden Globes, or watching the, I forget where they where they wore all black, but things like that, where they might come in and say, okay, I keep seeing Me Too, time's up, I need to talk to somebody. So we might see that as the reason, but over the years, that could have been any number of reasons that someone might come in. I saw this story in the news, or this book came out, this movie came out. So if a survivor is going to be triggered by something, we're not necessarily surprised. It just depends on the kind of where we are in the culture.
So triggering has happened for 30 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an old hat.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
So then, are there some things that are surprising, or that you didn't expect with this whole situation?
I would say the number of conversations that people who were otherwise not showing interest in the movement are sparking with at least me. So I'm not sure, and I haven't necessarily discussed this with my colleagues or anything like that, but I know that in my own social circle, folks would ask me about Green Dot, our prevention program, or talk to me about how difficult it must be to be an advocate, or something like that. But now I'm getting very focused interest on what these conversations, especially around harassment in the workplace, mean for their lives.
Oh.
Right. So, and I'm having a lot of these conversations with my male friends and colleagues, right, who are having these conversations with their male friends and colleagues, and I think that is wonderful. I think it is wonderful. I know that not every conversation is going to have the most positive spin, and I know there are a lot of critics and lots of different things that lots of conversations we could have, but when I have friends who are reaching out, friends and family members reaching out and saying, okay, this is an issue, here's what I'm overhearing, or here's what my friends are saying, my colleagues are saying, what would you say about this? What is your answer to this? That's huge.
And people want information, so
Yeah.
that probably was not happening.
No.
Right. So
Unfortunately not. It was kind of seen as that issue that you deal with, right, or that the women deal with. And we know that not all of the survivors who we're working with are women, right? So it's been an interesting year in that regard, with really proactive, I think, conversations. They might be reacting to the national trends, but I think people overwhelmingly want to do the right thing, want to be saying the right thing and behaving correctly, properly, and that, I think, has been the conversation shift that I've gotten to witness most directly.
So where do we go from here? So now, on one hand, you could say these conversations, this awareness is probably a good thing.
Absolutely.
And so maybe we can look forward to better times.
Yeah.
You've been doing this long enough, perhaps.
Sure.
I'm going to let you answer the question. I'm not going to answer the question.
Yes. Yeah, I do believe that now that We might be, and here's where I'll use your tipping point.
Okay.
We might be at a tipping point with the level of awareness, right? Now I think we can move really intentionally into prevention. And I'm talking primary prevention so that we don't have any perpetrator or victim. So the way that we do that, the way that we firmly believe can, will, and does already work is bystander intervention. We call that Green Dot on our
Okay.
campus. There are lots of different forms of this, but most basically it means that when someone sees a situation or overhears a situation that they feel like in their gut is not okay, shouldn't be happening, that they find some way to intervene and stop it from occurring. So that doesn't have to be, putting your cape on and being very direct. That can be then pulling that person aside and saying, hey, I really don't appreciate the way you're speaking to your colleague, our colleague there. Or, gosh, you know that that's not appropriate behavior. Or talking to the other person and saying, are you okay? Because I was uncomfortable by the way that person was speaking to you, and I just want you to know that I saw that, and I'm happy to do whatever would be helpful for you at this point. Those are some very basic types of interventions, but it doesn't have to be something big. Just calling attention to it is often enough to get the behavior to stop, especially when the level of awareness is so high right now. It could be delegating to someone and telling a supervisor, telling a friend that you saw this occurring. It could also just be causing a distraction. So shifting the conversation to something else that is more work appropriate or more appropriate for the situation. Those sort of options, direct, distract, and delegate, are the things that we're teaching our students, and they're using these really effectively and have been for years. I think we're in a point where our community can really use those skills as well.
And it's Green Dot?
Green Dot,
Because
yes.
why is Green Dot?
Yeah, if you were to picture a map of Columbia,
Okay.
and any incident of violence was a red dot on that map,
Okay.
then anything someone does to try to prevent it from happening would be a green dot. So
Oh.
I have my own little reminder
Yes.
here, but people, people will wear buttons. I've got pins, different things. It is a national program that we had the privilege of adopting 9 years ago. We were one of the first campuses to adopt it. But regardless of what folks call it, actively intervening, kind of doing the right thing, it's not new. We've been taking people's keys when they were too drunk to drive, or intervening if we saw, something violent occurring in the grocery store, But this type of intimate partner violence or power-based personal violence, we've not always felt empowered to step in on, and that's why we've gotten to where we are. For years, people saw these things happening, even, like you mentioned, Harvey Weinstein and so on. People saw these things happening. They were even helping to enable it. Mm-hmm. And if someone had intervened, we wouldn't be where we are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power in it.
And is that, now, I think you were mentioning perhaps the community outside the university is an area to think about. Is that something
Absolutely.
that you guys are
That's my hope.
working on? Is that
Working on it.
next
Yes.
yet to come?
Absolutely. So the national organization who runs Green Dot, Altruistic, they have a program called Community Mobilization, and we have started the conversations with the State Department of Health and Senior Services and some other key stakeholders in the community. We will, of course, welcome anyone who is interested in helping to support a training locally, but we would love to have individuals trained to then kind of spread this knowledge throughout the community, so that we can create kind of proactive zones of safety, if you will, proactive areas where we can say that, in Columbia, this type of violence is not going to be tolerated, and we are all going to do our part to do better.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Thank you.
So on campus and then community, like how, how far are we along, and where you want to be?
Well, my ultimate goal for the RCP Center, and I've said this for years, and I firmly believe it. If I stop believing it, I need to stop working there.
Okay.
But my ultimate goal is to put us out of business. I do not believe that violence is inevitable. I do not believe that that's who we are as human beings, to be hurting each other. I do believe that we can do better, and we can get to a point where violence is prevented and fully preventable, so an office like mine doesn't need to exist.
So good. That's a good goal.
Thank you.
but you
Where are we
you
now?
have a little work to do, right?
We do. Yes, we still have some work to do. I do believe that the commitment to providing resources and staffing and different things is there from the university, even in tough budget times. I believe that folks want to be doing the right thing, and that includes the faculty and staff volunteers who we have, who educate about Green Dot kind of in their abundant free time. We've got a group of about 50 to 60 trained faculty and staff who give these presentations. They're going to spend their Saturday, St. Patrick's Day, perfect for the
Green Dot, yes.
Yes, so we're going to be training another group of students on Green Dot. So the momentum is there. I do believe we can always do better, and we can always, of course, allocate more resources, more time, and the more we're actively stepping up and adding to the numbers of people who are actively saying violence is not okay, I'm doing my part, the more that an incident of violence is going to stick out. So more green dots we have, the more the red dots are going to look, really out of place.
Right.
Instead of just kind of being the norm that we reluctantly believe is just part of life. We don't hear people say that as much anymore. Even in the 13 years I've been in Columbia and on campus, I don't really hear people say oh, well, that's just what happens on a date kind of thing that I used to hear pretty often. So that makes me hopeful. And that's
been a gradual decline.
Absolutely.
So keep.
Yeah, we want to keep trending.
Keep going too.
Absolutely,
right.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. We're almost out of time, but
Sure.
I think the idea of the green dot, the great stories are probably hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody does something that's really terrific, a lot of this stuff is not really talked about, and maybe what is now the current environment, maybe we'll be able to tell those stories about how somebody came to somebody's aid or that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Is that can you tell those stories?
We do,
Good.
yeah. So we encourage people to tell us about the good things, and then we share those stories back, those really concrete examples, current examples where folks have shared those wonderful things with us, because we want to give people concrete solutions that they can utilize when they're in that situation. So whether that's being downtown at a bar or an establishment, being at a social event at a house or apartment, something like that, we have these stories readily available to kind of feed back to students, but also faculty and staff, and then now we're hoping the community as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And if you have a great green dot story, you know who to talk to.
Right here.
And we'll see you next month.
Thank you.